Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into something really fascinating. We are objectively breaking down the core arguments, the unique storytelling structure, and the absolute massive appeal of Arif Azad's hit book series Paradoxical Sajid. We're going to look exactly at how this series attempts to bridge that huge, sometimes intimidating gap between faith, science, and reason, and explore why it's resonated with so many readers. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever just stopped and thought about this massive existential question? If everything in the universe was perfectly created by a higher power, well, who created the creator? It's one of those heavy, age-old questions, right? The kind that just stops you dead in your tracks and leaves you completely wrapped in philosophical mystery. Or, how about this one? If our destiny is already pre-written, why in the world are we judged or rewarded or punished for our deeds? These are super sensitive, complex dilemmas that honestly often drive people towards skepticism. But what's really fascinating here is how the author tackles them. Instead of giving us dense, boring theological lectures, the book takes these atheistic questions and answers them using modern science and logic. And the best part? It's all delivered in this super casual conversational style, kind of like a chai or ada, a local tea stall hangout. It literally brings high philosophy right down to the street level. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at skeptic to believer, Sajid. Then we'll break down part 1, science and logic. After that, we'll explore part 2, history and debate. And finally, we'll unpack the secret behind the popularity. All right, starting with section 1, skeptic to believer, Sajid. To really get a grip on these arguments, we've got to meet the guy anchoring this whole philosophical journey. Sajid is a microbiology student at the prestigious Dhaka University. When we first meet him, he's a hardcore skeptic, a staunch atheist who actually ends up returning to his faith. But how? Well, it's not through blind acceptance, no way. It's through a really rigorous, deep study of science and philosophy. Sajid is basically a stand-in for modern youth, right? Young adults grappling with thousands of doubts and questions. And to make it all hit close to home, the entire story is narrated by his roommate and best friend, Arif. It genuinely feels like we're just sitting right there in the room with them while they debate. Moving on to section 2, part 1, science and logic. Now, what's really interesting about this is what happened when the first volume dropped back in 2017. It created an absolute storm. The author's core methodology is just fascinating. You see, Sajid doesn't rely on traditional dogma or just tell people to have blind faith. Instead, he directly counters atheist arguments using their own preferred weapon, modern science. The author deliberately frames Sajid's defenses purely around scientific logic. It creates this wild dynamic where faith is being argued through the lens of a microscope rather than from a pulpit. Let's look exactly at the scientific concepts the book uses. Sajid pulls in quantum mechanics to argue for the presence of an incredibly meticulous, intelligent creator. He brings up the Big Bang theory and the universal law of cause and effect. He logically argues that, hey, a design requires a designer, and the universe couldn't have just magically popped into existence from an absolute void. We're objectively looking at how Arif Azad uses these specific physics concepts to build a really structured case for faith inside the narrative. Let's move to and see how this builds in section 3. Part 2, history and debate. So, following the massive success of book 1, the second volume came out in 2019, and it expands Sajid's intellectual battlefield way beyond physics. We're talking sociology, linguistics, and historical analysis. The book sets up these direct conflicts between common criticisms and Sajid's defenses. For example, when critics attack the historical marriages of the Prophet, Sajid defends them by strictly contextualizing the historical and social norms of that specific era. When people point out allegedly unscientific claims in the Quran, Sajid actually breaks down the original Arabic grammar and linguistics to refute them, arguing they stem from misunderstandings. And finally, the book tackles Darwinian evolution, with Sajid presenting arguments that classify it as just a hypothesis, rather than an absolute, undeniable scientific truth. The author methodically addresses these major points of modern theological debate, one by one. And that brings us to section 4, the secret behind the popularity. And this brilliantly illustrates why these specific books stand out so much in a super crowded market of religion and science literature. The author uses a really clever 3-step formula. Step 1, simple language. There's no overly dense, headache-inducing philosophy here. It's written so anybody can pick it up and get it. Step 2, a storytelling style. Instead of a dry, boring textbook, it literally reads like an engaging novel. And step 3, heavy referencing. Every single major claim is backed up by quotes from scientists and academic journals. It's a structure that makes learning all this heavy stuff actually feel effortless. Taking a closer look at that second step, the storytelling, the setting is absolutely crucial. The narrative unfolds in these highly relatable, everyday places. We're talking about university hostel rooms, the super busy Nilkhet intersection in Dhaka, and those local roadside tea stalls. By placing these massive, universe-spanning debates in such grounded, recognizable locations, the author keeps the heavy material super engaging and relatable for the youth. It really feels like a chat you'd be having with your own friends. Finally, check out this quote. It sums it up perfectly. The author didn't use made-up words. Every argument is backed by quotes from famous scientists, books, and journals. This is such a critical point from the source material. By leaning so heavily on proper citations instead of just personal opinion, the author completely solidifies the book's appeal to logical thinkers. The folks who need tangible proof. It bridges the gap for readers who want their theology to hold up to a high level of academic scrutiny. So, what does this all mean? Well, whether you approach this material as a staunch believer or a hardcore atheist, the Paradoxical Sajid series offers a truly fascinating look into the intersection of logic, science, and faith. It really challenges you to think critically about where you stand. So, I want to leave you with a final provocative question. Which of Sajid's arguments or logic from today's explainer did you find the most intriguing? And do you think science and faith can actually bridge their historical divide? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, definitely hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more structured explainers of fascinating topics. Thanks so much for learning with me today.